Are you going to ask your nominees beforehand how they might vote on Roe versus Wade?
Well, that's a big one, and probably not. They're all saying, don't do that, you don't do that, you shouldn't do that, but I'm putting conservative people on. But I don't think I'm going to be so specific in the questions I'll be answering. And I'm actually told that I shouldn't be.
Justice Anthony Kennedy's retirement from the Supreme Court has set up a battle over his replacement and what it means for the future of the court. At the center of the fight is the effect Donald Trump's pick will have on Roe versus Wade. Back with me, Tiffany Cross, co-founder and managing editor of The Beat DC, Jennifer Rubin, Washington Post opinion writer, and Jason Johnson, politics editor for The Root. I feel like friends of the show know who all y'all are, so maybe we will shorten it next time because everybody knows you guys. So the whole issue, of course, of Roe, I want to go to you on this first, Jennifer, because you've had a lot to say about Susan Collins and Lisa Murkowski and the idea that they can be moved on this issue if enough pressure is applied. Here is Senator Susan Collins of Maine this morning on CNN State of the Union talking about whether she would vote to affirm a Supreme Court candidate who was against Roe.
I would not support a nominee who demonstrated hostility to Roe v. Wade, because that would mean to me that their judicial philosophy did not include a respect for established decisions, established law.
But Jennifer Rubin, it would be surprising to me if any nominee would openly demonstrate hostility to Roe, right? They're just going to come through the Heritage Foundation and just be hostile to it quietly.
Exactly. What everyone has to be crystal clear about is everyone on that list, in order to get on the list, in order to be vetted by the Federalist Society, which put it together, has to be committed to overturning Roe. They wouldn't be on the list if they didn't. That's the name of the game. Susan Collins could say, well, as long as the person upholds precedent, well, he didn't say he was hostile. No, no, no. Any of the people on that list, voting for them is a vote to overturn Roe v. Wade. And it's very interesting how the right and the pro-life movement now is saying, oh, no, we're not necessarily finding someone to overturn Roe. Oh, no. We're just talking about a conservative-minded justice. They are scared because they realize now the issue is front and center for the American people. Do you want to criminalize abortion? Because that's what about half the states are going to do if Roe goes away. Yeah. So do you want to criminalize abortion? Do you want to punish women and doctors, or don't you? It's a very simple question.
Yeah, and let's just put up this map here to show you where abortion rights would be immediately at risk. You can see there, yellow is the low-risk states, orange is the medium-risk, red, see that? That's all the high-risk states, Tiffany, where there are already laws on the books poised if Roe were to fall, that it would become illegal or at least very, very hard to obtain. There's always been sort of two options. Either Republicans really want, because their base really wants to overturn Roe, let's just not put too fine a point on it, and that they want it too, or they just want the issue, and that they actually don't want Roe to really fall, because then you'd have 50 civil wars in each of these individual states.
Right. We've seen the Republican Party care so much about fetuses, but not that much about babies. They don't mind putting babies in cages, but they just don't, want women to have the right to choose to decide what to do with their own bodies. I have to tell you, and I know you're much further ahead than me, so we can't talk about this too much. I'm in season 1 of The Handmaid's Tale. Oh, I have to tell you, when they showed the flashbacks to how they got there, it is like watching present-day news, and it's very scary. This is a very scary time, and Democrats really don't have any leverage, as your guest in the previous segment talked about, which is a scary time. Of Donald Trump's list, first of all, of a list of 25 people, there were 2 people of color. Not that it mattered. They all, lean extremely conservative. And I do think you have around 25 states where the issue will inevitably land in the Supreme Court, and it will eventually get overturned. And as we have this conversation, I don't want people to take their eyes off some of these district court judges who've been appointed. They're really trying to cover this administration is like trying to catch confetti, and there's so much that has happened already. The train has left the station. If there's anything that Democrats can do, which I don't think there is, to hold this vote until after November. McConnell has already tried to walk it back and change his McConnell rule rhetoric, that it's not a presidential election year. So that's what I meant. But if there's anything, I just don't know a way. I've looked at the issue. I can't see a way that Democrats have any leverage here. I think this is a foregone conclusion. And I was joking with Jason earlier. I wanted to disagree agree with him a little bit because he tweeted that the judge, because Kennedy was a conservative, but I think whoever Donald Trump appoints is going to be to the right of Kennedy.
Yes,
so
yeah.
I do think that we're going to see some changes on the court.
And will be Kennedy. And no, Kennedy was the swing vote that was keeping Roe legal. I mean,
Right.
you know, let's not be unclear. I mean, Trump praised him because his son was in the bank that lent Trump money. But Trump's base didn't like Kennedy because Kennedy every so often did something that wasn't far right wing. I want to play for you, Jason Johnson, the Democratic Senator Maria Cantwell explaining the Democrats' strategy. You've been pretty critical of Democratic strategy on the SCOTUS in general. I want to let you react to this. Take a listen.
The plan here is to speak out about the change in balance in the court. You are not just voting, as was with Gorsuch, for just one more name. You know that Justice Kennedy was a swing vote, that he was a libertarian, that sometimes he sided with the conservative justices, sometimes he upheld what were very important issues of marriage equality, of issues on the environment.
Jason, why are Democrats always just have such equanimity? I mean, when Justice Scalia passed away, you know, the president then nominated a moderate. He didn't nominate someone that would radically shift the court to the left. And now Democrats are saying, oh, we're not going to throw our bodies in front of this nomination. We're just going to talk about philosophy.
That is the worst campaign slogan. I just heard like the Peanuts, wah, 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 wah. I don't care. You have to make this a dire situation. And here, Joy, this is any Democrat who wants a strategy on this. It's really basic. Like I said, I've worked for both parties, so I'm going to give them some free advice. You say, unless you want to have to sneak from state to state to get an abortion, you got to go out and fight. You got to go out and vote. Because the Supreme Court, they're not just going to overturn Roe versus Wade immediately, right? That does work for, you know, Handmaid's Tale. They haven't blown up the Boston Globe yet. But, you know, what they're going to do is they're just going to keep chipping away at it like they've done with the Affordable Care Act. And what they'll say is, look, there's no federal mandate. There's no this, there's no that. And state by state, it will become harder and harder and harder for women to make choices. And not only that, it'll get into prenatal care. It'll get into contraception access. So it's not just going to be about abortion. That's what Democrats need to scream about. Nobody wants a philosophy lesson, and if you have to take 25 minutes to explain how millions of people's lives will be affected, you shouldn't be in office anymore. You should be out writing papers because you're not a good campaigner.
And you know, Jennifer Rubin, as someone who's been in the Republican Party, can you just make it clear? It is true that Republicans want the Supreme Court to overturn Roe v. Wade. The Washington Examiner's editorial this week said so.
For 40 years, this has been their goal. All you have to do is go back and look at people like Ted Cruz, who doesn't think that women should be allowed to have an abortion in cases of rape and incest. They have said this over and over again, and now, no, not us. No, this has been the goal. This has been the pledge for the party. This has been in the Republican platform. Come on, guys. You know, Democrats may have their wool pulled over the eyes now and then, but even they don't believe this. Yeah. So it just shows you how afraid they are of that confrontation, because across the country, 67% of voters do not want to reverse Roe.
Absolutely. And let's not pretend that it's just about Roe v. Wade, because you also have affirmative action in the balance. The Voting Rights Act would probably be dead.
Yep.
If they and you could eventually be looking at a 7-2 court, because the next two oldest justices are both the liberals. And if they were to retire, very quickly, the other option that was presented to Democrats that Republicans are talking about more than Democrats are, the Democrats have already dismissed as a strategic option. Here's Lindsey Graham on Meet the Press saying the Donald Trump Supreme Court pick should not have to automatically recuse themselves on issues related to the Russia investigation, even though that person could give him a 5-4 vote that says he can pardon himself in theory. Let's listen to Lindsey Graham.
The idea that you can't judge somebody who picks you is probably not a ground for recusal. You got to show there's a connection between the case at hand and the activity of the judge. It makes perfect sense to me that Jeff Sessions can't oversee an investigation of a campaign he was part of, but I wouldn't have a broad rule that you can't, you know, review anything against President Trump because he chose you.
Donald Trump asks for loyalty pledges from everyone that he appoints to everything.
This is ridiculous, and really this is what this court pick is all about. It's not just Roe v. Wade. I would argue that that's the red herring. I mean, there is definitely a reasonable course of action where charges against Donald Trump could potentially land in front of the Supreme Court. And this is all a part of his strategy to discredit the investigation. And if that doesn't work, then to apply the courts with judges who would defend him at no cost. So this is a challenge. I just want to say, to Jennifer's point and to your point, Democrats have to do better. And if you can't stand with the people, then step aside.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm going to give you the last word on this, Jason, because you've been critical of the strategy going back to Merrick Garland.
Yeah, well, look, they don't have a strategy. And this goes back to two things, and I said this before. One, Barack Obama tried to get Ruth Bader Ginsburg to retire. So points for him. He tried to tell her, look, this might happen. But when he failed to put Merrick Garland on the court, I said it was one of the most cowardly, ridiculous decisions that any president has ever made in history, and he will be judged harshly. Had the president done something at the time, even if that person had left office, we would be looking at a different situation in the court. It's not all his fault, but we need to think about that heading forward. People have to play this game more seriously.
The Democrats have to be tougher. I mean, there are a lot of people who argue that had he put someone up as a nominee, that people would have gone into the streets for. I mean, a whole different world if he says, here's Cheryl Eiffel, or here's someone that people would have been in the streets demonstrating for. Not that Merrick Garland isn't a perfectly great judge. Many thanks. Merrick Garland fans, please don't come for me on Twitter. But they're already going to come for you, Jason. There's nothing you can do about that. Thank you, Tiffany Cross, Jennifer Rubin, and Jason Johnson, our all-stars. Thank you guys for being here. And up next, a former